Our guest today is Jess Penkhues. She's a technical recruiter at Google and she looks after software engineering roles that ranges from university graduates until senior principals. In our conversation today, we are exploring a range of topics from interviewing at Google to challenges of remote interviews and diversity. Hi, this is Anirban Saha and I welcome you on behalf of the team to one new episode of Season 2 where we interview a selected few professionals in the domain of data science and converse about what it takes to get a job in the real world. If you like our work, hit the follow button on our LinkedIn page, the link of which you will find on the podcast description. Also do share your feedback with us and listen to the other episodes. Let's get started. Jess, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for the introduction and an invitation as well. Super excited to be here, and I hope this will be a worthwhile hour plus for everyone listening in.
I just hope this conversation would add a lot of value. When we were preparing for this interview, we had a lot of questions and we just did not know where to start. So let's start with this question. There is a general perception that interviews in Google are tough. Would you agree with this?
Well, I guess it's a subjective opinion, right? Tough might be for some and not for others, right? But indeed, we have a comparably low number of people that we actually put through the process and make an offer to. On the other side, you also need to see the high load of applications, referral, people that we as recruiters reach out to as well, and then obviously compared to the numbers of open roles that we have. So we obviously, unfortunately, can't hire everyone in the first try. So I guess that's why the perception might be correct, but we also do have a lot of applications, so if that makes sense.
So why do you think a lot of applicants find it challenging?
In my experience, I think a lot of the times it comes down to nerves and preparation, right? So most candidates unfortunately also assume this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to interview at Google, whereas it not, right? So we do ourselves also re-engage with candidates after the cool down period, right? So we do reach out to them again and we want them to interview again. Some of them might just not make it in the first run, but maybe in the second or third, right? And we do see potential and we want to engage with them. So I think this can already calm you a little bit more down in terms of your nerves, right? You can get the feedback in, you can see what we say, what you would need to improve for a certain role, what skills are not 100% where we need them to be. So it's valuable feedback as well. And I think oftentimes the nervosity comes hand in hand with the preparation, right? So we as recruiters share maybe even too much information to ensure the candidates know what to prepare for, what is expecting during the interviews. And for me personally, if I feel prepared to go into an interview, into a presentation, a meeting, I'm less nervous and more confident to be successful. However, there's always only so much a person can prepare for. And sometimes we just require you to think on your feet, right? So there's not always the correct answer when it's a non-technical question, right? There's a bandwidth of answers that are fine. And it's more about us understanding how do you solve this problem? How do you think? How do you get to the solution? And it might not necessarily be that the solution needs to be correct. On the other hand, obviously, we also don't want candidates to burn out while preparing. So we, as recruiters, sometimes push them also to just, let's do the interviews in 3 weeks. Get the feedback in. If it's not positive, at least we know what we need to work on. And as I said, we would re-engage again, right? So this can be also a very insightful feedback to know what to focus on, what is actually good, what do you need to prepare more on, and then try to come back again after the cool down period, right? So it can be very helpful feedback as well. And in terms of nervosity, I personally see interviews as a great experience because when was it the last time someone took 45, 60 minutes to just listen to you, right? Where do you have that? So you can also just take it like this.
A thought came to my mind, but I'll not say that.
Okay.
But what you said is really, really very true for freshers, those who are fresh graduates, especially those who are international students. They come out of their homes to study in Germany, in France, in Italy, in the UK. And when they get an interview call from Google, isn't getting nervous or over preparing normal?
I think it is. And what I would say there's a reason why we talk to you. So be also confident enough that we know what we are doing most of the times, I hope, right? So it's good to be nervous, and I think it brings you on the edge of your feet, right? It's like going on stage. You've rehearsed the same lines a million times, but there's still like the heartbeat, right? Which is good, right? The adrenaline, which is fine, which is needed also. But then on the other side, as I said, it's not a once in a lifetime chance. And there's only so much you can do and prepare for. Like even internally, right? I switched roles a couple of times. I try to prepare for meetings and interviews, and the questions are just like out of nowhere and like, okay, how do I answer this? And this is more about like thinking on your feet.
So thinking on your feet requires a certain amount of smartness and soft skills, right?
Preparation, maybe.
Okay. So one of our previous sessions was dedicated to how an applicant's personality fits that of the team or the company. As a recruiter, what qualities do you look for in a person, in an applicant, except what you already mentioned, that the person should think on their feet?
Yeah. So obviously the first thing that catches one of our eyes is the skills, right? So if it's a CV or your LinkedIn profile, we look for a certain skill. And let's say if this is really plain software engineering, and we look for C++, if this is not listed and we need this dearly, or Android, and it's not listed, then this won't match just from like the skills perspective, right? So obviously this is the first thing to make sure that we add the people that are successful throughout. But then additionally, obviously, it's important for us, and maybe also for yourself as an applicant, to know why you're applying to a certain company, project, role. And for us, it's more about the deeper insights than only everyone wants to work at Google, right? And it's not about the perks and the benefits. It's more about looking up a company's homepage, the products, the values. Maybe if you can speak with representatives from the company at a fair, right? And now with this all being virtual, it's quite easy. There are so many events still happening where you can get a one-on-one chat with the recruiter and just figure out yourself if this is actually a company that fits to you. And especially for fresh graduates and university students, I would highly recommend to speak with a bunch of companies, startups, bigger companies, companies that are very similar to Google, that are tech, just for yourself to figure out where you want to start. And maybe it's in the end the startup because they have such a cool vibe. They are so nice in the interviews, and you just click with them, and then you start there, right? So you are interviewing the company the same time we are interviewing you, right? And if you don't feel this is something that you want to do right now, or people are not nice to you throughout the process, do you really want to work there? So I think it's both ways, if that makes sense. And then obviously while going through the process, not only I am personally interested into hearing why you applied or so, but it's also interesting to know, does the culture fit to you, the networking, right? Does it make sense to build up a relationship over time? And you would be surprised how many candidates of ours don't really say thanks. Hi, how is your day? looking forward to. Thanks for taking the time. So, there should be a mutual respect, friendliness, being polite. You need to keep in mind that the recruiter is the gateway into a company and be your partner in crime to make you successful throughout the process, right? Do you have questions? Maybe you don't understand the preparation material? You are unsure of what's the next step? Your recruiter should be the partner in crime, and they should help you. So you need to also start having a relationship with them at some level, if that makes sense.
So mutual respect, being polite, networking, building relationships. A lot of students, when they grew up in countries in the subcontinent, which is a lot of our people who are our audience, they have this buzzword called soft skills. They focus on this. So would you be able to list some more soft skills that you look forward to?
So in our interview process, we do have, I don't know, cultural fit, soft skill interview, however you want to call it out there, where we do ask questions around projects, project management, leading a team, maybe even, right? And as I said before, there is no right or wrong answers, just like how do you work on a challenge, right? If you realize you're not making the deadline for this project, who do you tell, when, and why? Do you think you should have told anyone earlier, right? And then just coming from your experience there. And interviewers, even if it's a technical interview, they still get a vibe if you are nice to work with. And this is just around the friendliness, the questions you might also ask them after the interviews, the conversation you can have with them, right? And if it's also about coding, do you listen to the feedback that they give you? They try to help you to solve the problem, right? Are you taking this on, or you're like, no, this is the one way and this is the only way to go? So there are a couple of things surrounding the technical or the role-related knowledge that are somewhat the soft skills there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll take two keywords from this answer. One is friendliness and openness to feedback. And obviously, project management questions. When you converse with a person, you get to know whether the person has actually worked on something, or when the person answers in details, you get to know. And that's very, very interesting. Given that a lot of conversations now happen online, how do you understand a person?
Do you mean?
Like, I understand that friendliness can be gauged based on how the person is responding. Except for that, like, you can see only this much of the person. The person might be shivering down below. Then how do you try and understand a person through virtual meetings?
In Google, we encourage everyone to come as they are, right? So especially, and I found this very interesting throughout the pandemic and the virtual interviews and calls and whatnot, to see cats climbing on your laptop, right? Like a tail wiggling, the kid in the background screaming, the mailman, women ringing your bell, right? So these are things that are so natural and happening. Or you sitting at the beach while talking to me, which the only thing I would be is jealous. So, and it's fine. It's something that you can build a relationship on, right? Like, oh, you like flowers. Oh, did you water them already today? Look at mine, right? So this is something easy to connect with, and just like build this from there, and also to have something to come back to in the next call, right? So like, how was it at the beach? How's your cat doing? Something like this. Is your kid at school? Like, without being too intimate in this question, but just like a fun fact, right? And we do also value vacations, and we take them very seriously, right? So if you say, look, would love to speak or would love to do the interview, but I'm going to Spain for 3 weeks. Can we do this in October? And it's like, yeah, please take your holidays, right? And then you can say, how was Spain? Right. And then you come into a natural conversation there. So I think this is a way to connect easily, although we are all working from home or it's all virtual. And maybe this takes a little bit the stress and adversity back from a candidate that is talking to me. And also, you don't have to switch on your camera if you don't want to. That's also absolutely fine, right? So I feel a little bit with the pandemic and all these virtual meetings, everyone always feels they need to switch on the cameras. And I sometimes don't want to, which is fine, right? Sometimes I don't have that day. And it's fine. You can just say, look, camera is not working. How should I know? My laptop is sometimes not working. So if you don't want to, that's fine.
Yeah. The reason why I suddenly changed my background is when I was preparing for this interview, I read an article where you mentioned that things in people's background could also be a conversation starter. For example, you have plants behind you. I have one too.
Yeah. And maybe your like cat or so is running around, right? Or
Not having
yeah, but you know, like so many people say, oh, the door is ringing. I'm like, yeah. My manager even in the meeting before is like, oh wait, my phone is ringing. I need to pull off the foil on my lunch. Can you just give him? It is fine. Like, why not, right? We need to eat. We need to get things delivered.
So during an interview, these small things help as conversation starters and breaking the ice and making both people in the conversation calmer and just stable enough to continue with the meeting, right?
Yeah, and I think there's so much going on, right? And I don't know the person's background, right? And it might be super tough on them. So why do we have to have a serious meeting? I mean, I'm also just a person.
And then you start asking questions. So my next question would be, is there a question that you love asking all applicants? Like a trick
Yes.
question of your choice.
Yeah, obviously, I do have to be serious for a certain amount of time in this call and ask like technical questions, role related knowledge to figure out if this makes sense to put them in the interview process. And you need to also keep in mind that this is not against you if this doesn't make sense. It just means maybe I misunderstood your CV, the skills that you have. Maybe you're not there yet. But aside from this knowledge, I do like still to ask the question why Google or why this certain role that you applied to. And I'd rather not hear because everyone wants to work at Google, or it's been my dream, or it's been the perks. I want to travel the world with Google. There's so many other companies you can do this with, right? So what's the edge that makes you apply to us? And something that I still have in my mind, and I think it was even before the pandemic, is a person who told me, look, 10 years ago, there was one of your VPs about a certain product. They launched it. There was an interesting video, and this got me engaged into tech or into learning Android app development or something, right? And this is what I want to hear. And this is also where I personally learned something new because I didn't know.
Talking about Google's products, one product really did intrigue me, and that was Google Wave. But I was pretty sad when that was discontinued. It really inspired me to get more into this thing.
Yeah, and also sometimes like, so what is the product you like the most? And it can be any one, right? Any product that we have, and then you can start with the conversation there. It's like, oh, maps, why? Oh yeah, but you know, I don't like this and this feature. I think you could improve on it. I was like, oh yeah, never thought about this. Not that I have the connection to every single product team, but definitely worthwhile having that feedback.
You mentioned while you were talking that you might want to ask if you have misunderstood a CV, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very sure being a recruiter at Google, you go through a lot of CVs. So now that you have seen enough CVs being a recruiter at Google, enough number of CVs and cover letters, what is that one thing that you get bored with? That one thing in the CV, one thing in the cover letter that you're like, this person also.
You need to keep in mind that, and I said this in the beginning, we have so many candidates on a yearly basis and so many CVs, applications. This needs to be quick and easy to read. So unnecessarily long CVs, too much content, things that are not related or relevant to the role. It's just not working so well, right? Rather a 1.5 pages long CV with like the things that you actually do in your current role, bullet points, projects, anything that is role related, maybe even the prior role. If you're in tech, hackathons, which we would encourage anyway to do, like any awards or so that you get, I would be the only thing I really want to see. And to make it easier for yourself as well as for the recruiter, I would look at the job description and then take out the buzzwords of like designed X, led project X, is familiar with XYZ, and basically copy pasting this in your CV to make it very easy to understand if this is a match for the profile that we are looking for. And also avoid spelling mistakes. And if you're applying for Microsoft, send a CV to Microsoft. And if you're applying to Google, send the CV to Google. So I recently saw a CV that said, applying to this and this role at Microsoft. Maybe change that before you send it to Google.
Yeah, but does it get boring after a certain point in time?
Looking at CVs or?
Looking at CV or something which keeps repeating?
I wouldn't say boring. I really enjoy if this is an easy, short, quick, good overview CV. Boring might be the wrong word, but I don't really like unnecessarily long, like 10 pages, which we do sometimes still see.
10 pages is a novel, not a CV.
But it is.
There's one thing I take back from your answer here. You mentioned that things which are not relevant should not be on the things which are not relevant to the role might not be on the CV. So what about for people like, I know quite a few people who are doing their masters in data science and is not very young, and the next job that they want to do is in project management or product management.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to give a couple of because whatever they do in data science project are technical, which are not related to product management.
Mm-hmm.
So what would these people do then?
Yeah, I think what could be an easy thing is to get like a student job, an internship, something along the lines of while you are still studying. And even if you work on a project and it's very technical, you still do project management, right? So carve out the skills that you acquired in this project, right? So just because you made an amazing Android app or, robotics or whatever it is, data science related things where you change the world with, you still worked with different people, you had deadlines, you maybe had a project plan, like these sort of things that are project management related. And I would carve these out. And as I said, do look at the role description and use the buzzwords to match them with your CV. So I think there's still something in it. As well as I said before, get some experience outside of university or the things that you are doing here, right? I mean, you're like setting up this podcast. There are so many people helping you. You work as a team. There are challenges involved, right? External speakers also challenging, right? So there are still things that you can use to showcase your project management experience.
So the podcasts that I'm doing would has the potential to help me as well.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Let's come to the multicultural aspect of Google. But I want your very personal perspective to this, and like a short one, because we have already spent around 30 minutes.
Okay.
How do cultural differences impact the professional workspace?
In Google, we do embrace cultural differences, diversity a lot. We value different personalities, thoughts, perspective, right? Because we aim to make great products and tools for everyone, not only externally but also internally, right? So imagine if you would create an app and you only have right-handed people on your team. Once you launch this, and there's obviously left-handed people in the world, they might not reach a certain button or it's difficult for them, right? So we want to, obviously we do this on a bigger scale. So we do look for people from different ethnicities, backgrounds, genders, parts of the world. And there's also still this misconception that Google only hires people from certain universities or certain degrees, which is not true, because we do look into all sorts of different backgrounds. I personally hired, one of my first hires in this role was an 18-year-old candidate who has not started university yet, right? And they just had a lot of experience and aced the interviews, right? So this is also a super great perspective to bring in, because they're young, they have a fresh mind, they have open new eyes to things. So this is something that we embrace very dearly.
How important is cultural diversity and inclusion when you are trying to evaluate a candidate?
Yeah, I think it comes with the skills, right? So as I said, it's also within your CV still, right? So you might have not graduated from Harvard, which not everyone needs to do, right? But you have a very unique skill set that has shaped you from wherever you're coming from, right? So this is still important for us, and we do see this still, and it's very important for us to have a very diverse workforce, and be inclusive within our hiring.
A lot of international students get out of their home countries or cultures, especially when we are talking about people from the subcontinent. Like, it is called a subcontinent, like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, because it's
Yeah.
so huge and so diverse.
Yeah.
They come out of their comfort zone for the first time. What they tend to do is stick around with people who speak the same language or has something in common. There is a certain amount of inhibition when it comes to them interacting with people who are visibly very different, who are culturally very different. Would you like to give them a couple of tips?
I think diving into those new and different cultures is really a great way to also realize who you are and embrace those differences between the new thing and your home country or your home culture, right? So um, I think it's very natural that you stick to the people and the similarities of what you're known. So do take your time to adjust to the new surrounding, right? To cultural differences, ways of working. It can be super overwhelming when you just arrived and like, oh my God, this is all different. So it's very naturally that you're drawn to the same things, but over time, and really do take this time. I personally also experienced that things get easier, and you're able to smile about the differences. Some of them you will hate and dislike forever, and some of them you might actually find intriguing and worthwhile keeping if you go in to explore new things, right? And one personal thing that I always found very easy is to engage in sport activities. So this might be still somewhat the same type of people because you all love to do soccer, tennis, whatever it is. But this might be people from different cultures, right? There might be different backgrounds. There might be just the people that you are in the same country with. So I think this is an easy way to explore and dip your feet into the cold water and see how things are going there, and just try figuring things out. Maybe even the same with music, or if you're like into theater playing or something like this. So like the hobbies part, I think you can easily go in. If it's not for you, you can still go out and you've made the experience. And I think also remember that you are not staying there forever, right? So I think it's easy if you say, well, I'm only doing this for 2 years, then 2 years become maybe 4 or 5 years, and then you can still change. And if this is also related to workplace or companies, keep in mind that people might be interested to you, your culture and your way of life as well, because this might be new to them, right? So you might be the only one. So this makes up for a really great opportunity to share learnings, experiences, and bring each other closer, or us closer together. And be mindful and respectful, because not everyone is aware of these cultural differences. So assume good intent, but also make sure that you're still treated equitably, fairly. So don't be afraid to speak up if you feel there's something wrong.
There is a lot to take away from your answer here.
I hope that's a good thing.
Because I have seen these differences myself, and I myself
Mhm.
have had a lot of inhibitions. I'll be very honest. Whether I'll be accepted in a team with people from Italy, France, Germany, England, and US, and it was a little difficult. I won't use the word difficult. I will use the word awkward for the
Mhm.
first couple of days, and then now I'm just fine.
Yeah, and I mean, I've also explored the world, worked in different areas, countries, um, and then you just need to speak about it, right? So it's like, hey, what does this actually mean if you say this and this? And it might just be a weird wording that you've never heard before, or an internal joke or something, and just be open and, yeah, vulnerable, maybe even. So as I said, assume good intent. They usually don't want to do you harm. They are just different, right? And if you ask them, like, what does this actually mean? Can you explain this to me? If like a very funny thing that I didn't know about Germans before I left and came back is we say Feierabend and Mittag and these sort of things. And they were like, what does this actually mean? Why do you say Mittag when you go to lunch? And it's like, just greet each other. This is very normal. And like just explaining these things, because it's a cultural differences and a habit, right? And it's nothing bad, or and I think this is funny because you also get more aware of your own culture and, yeah, the things that you've learned, and if they make sense or not.
Continuing with this discussion, I'll stretching it a little bit. You are a woman working in IT, which
Mhm.
is predominantly a male dominated workspace. When you were starting, did you face any difficulties?
Mm, I think I was in a lucky position when I started, because I started in the EMEA headquarters in Dublin, which is a very international and intercultural workplace. People from all over the world come to start at Google there. Lots of very young people, very experienced ones. And the team that I was in was a marketing team, which collected all the different countries basically in one room. So I worked with Italians, Lebanese, Russians, French people. So there's a lot going on, also from like a cultural perspective. And I remember that one of my friends basically now came into a meeting. She's like, "Oh my God, I'm so late. I know you Germans are always on time. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Like, I'll be really always on time, right? So I think this was really cute as well. So I think I had a very easy start. But nevertheless, I think it's worth mentioning that Google is one of the first employers in the industry to share numbers around diversity setting up a report, sharing this, and starting an open debate in the industry, and acknowledging that there is still a long way to go, right? And there's still a perception that only certain roles will be filled with certain people or certain backgrounds.
And those reports are extremely insightful and quite an inspiration for young entrepreneurs or young startups. One thing I couldn't help but notice, it's the percentage of women employees uh, jumped 3% in 2 years across the organization. That's very, very encouraging. But I will go back to your previous answer and I'll just point out, you mentioned you were lucky. Would that suggest that women in general, when they start, they face difficulties?
This is not how I mentioned or intended it to mean. I personally was not aware that I'm a minority or so being a woman in tech. I just found this out while working at Google. And I think there is, as I said, it's a long way to go for a lot of different ethnicities, backgrounds, genders. So I didn't really have any difficulties. This is how I mentioned meant the answer. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm sorry for picking on that.
No, it's good. Yeah, good to clarify.
But the numbers do suggest a very less participation of women in computer science or in the IT world. Like less than 15% of the students at this university in the Department of Computer Science are women. And it's comparatively lower in the workspace as well. So to a woman who is listening to you right now, and I believe there are quite a few of them, what advice would you like to give them?
First, to the numbers that you just mentioned, also around university. This is an historical background, right? So I think we need to also acknowledge this, that we can't change the workplace if there's less and less women going into universities, right? So this is something that will come over time if more and more people feel comfortable studying IT, right? So this will then also be reflected in workplace and companies over time. So I think this just takes a little bit longer, if that makes sense. And for a woman listening in, I would say be yourself. Speak up if you feel treated unfairly, or like missing out of opportunities because you're not seen. And negotiate compensation, please.
Okay. I really want to ask more questions on this, but we are 40 minutes into this discussion. So I'll very quickly go to the next one. A lot of people who are here today and those who will be listening would want to apply to Google for the very simple reason is Google. So what would be just 3 main quick tips that you would like to give for interviews? What I already take back from this discussion is they should be quick on their feet, they should be open and approachable, and yeah, they should know very basics of project management, leading a team. They should have good qualities apart from the technicalities. Except for that, do you have 3 quick tips?
It's good that I have a couple of more tips. I would say prepare, but also be confident. There's a reason why you are in this process. Have fun, right? Remember that you are also interviewing the company or Google for that sake. And in case things don't work out in the first run, ask for feedback, stay in touch with the recruiter, reach out again once the cool down period is off and you feel you want to try it again.
Just a clarification, the cool down period is the period that you are not invited to any interviews after you're rejected once, and that is for 6 months.
Yeah, so we usually have like a cool down period, or however you want to call it, of depending a little bit on also the feedback, somewhere between 10 to 12 months, where we shouldn't have you apply again, just because we realize and the data shows that the more experience you gain over the time, and maybe also the more time you have to recharge and start preparing again, the longer this takes, the more successful you will be in the second or in the third try.
Okay. Jess, we thank you so much for making time for this interaction. I hope those who would be listening to us would find this useful in some ways. Did you have fun talking to me? I'm sorry, I was a jerk at times.
No, I really love to be here. And thanks so much for reaching out, getting in touch. I hope it was interesting for a lot of the people listening in.
And I think we should take a couple of questions from the audience. We still have a couple of, quite a few minutes left. So the first question that I see here is by Krishna. What is the language of instruction in Google Germany?
What does it mean, language of instruction?
Language of communication in Google.
So in general, we always speak English. Obviously, if you are in Google and you meet with your colleague who's from the same country or does speak the same language, I assume, and I know that people like I would then speak German with my German friend, but in general, the language in meetings, presentations, general communication will always be English.
The next question is from Geeta. For a person who switches career, how does their past experience help with the current role? How can the person use the previous experience to? I think this is already answered during the conversation.
Yeah, in general, I think I would look at what could the old role give you to do the new one. But for us, ideally, you still have a couple of months, maybe a year plus experience in the current role, so that it makes sense for us to interview you for the new thing that you're currently doing.
I'll take the next question from Jishan, and he says, "Hey Jess, thank you for the informative session. As a recruiter, how do you evaluate whether the soft skills of an applicant will be good fit for the vacancy at hand? For example, someone mentions in their CV that they have good leadership skills or quick learning skills or willingness to learn soft skills. So how can a recruiter judge this?"
I always take the leap of faith. And as I said, I would usually look at the hard skills first, right? So does this match the profile I'm looking for? And then just see in the initial call, like the decency of just saying thanks and hi, how are you, friendliness, and those sort of things. And then the other parts will be evaluated throughout the interview. So just because you have a technical interview doesn't mean that the interviewer has a closed eye on how you interact with them. Same with like all the interactions that happen in between, like rescheduling interviews, which is absolutely fine. Just the way you approach this and the way you communicate this is also a piece of the soft skills that we are looking at.
I'll take the next question from Arpita Haldar. She says, how much importance does Google give to open source project contributors? Is it possible to recruit someone directly if that person contributes something really great in a Google open source project? Example, MediaPipe.
We do have Googlers who are then obviously active in these open source communities, and they reach out to us and say, look, I think this is a great person. Would you mind reaching out? So we do have this, and we actively encourage our colleagues to help us recruit and get in touch with people, etc. So if you are one of those, maybe get in touch. I assume there are like names or email addresses in there, but also do put this on your CV so that we can also just see and speak with the Googler, right? So if you say working on open source project X, made X contributions, I assume person X has seen this, feel free to reach out to them or start a conversation on LinkedIn with the Googler that you're working. This can also be super helpful.
The next question is from Disha. How easy is role transition at Google? For example, from a technical role to a management role. As an employee of Google, would the interview process differ from other external candidates?
Mm. So within Google, it's rather easy to switch roles. So if you take me, for example, I started in marketing, I did a rotation in sales, and now I'm in recruiting. So nothing related to the field that I studied or that I started in, right? And if you are looking from a technical perspective into management, this is usually something that is encouraged. Any internal transfer that you want to do is encouraged, right? So usually we say you need to stay in your role for at least 10 to 12 months um, to gain the experience there and to actually be able to make a call if you want to leave or switch again. But if you want to stay technical and just basically move up into leadership, this is something that you and your manager need to discuss so that they can support you. Maybe they can give you some interns to mentor, to buddy. Maybe start having you giving you a smaller team to see if you actually really like people management or leading people, and then slowly progressing into a management role. And internally, there won't be many more interviews. It's more of if you're switching from a marketing role into a sales role into a tech role, then we need to still make sure that you have the role related knowledge that we are looking for. I hope this helps.
Yes, it does. The next question is from Shubham, and he asks, does Google provide a detailed feedback if asked after rejection?
Yeah, so we are usually only allowed to share the feedback via call, and we try to be as precise as possible. But we do also only have a couple of notes from the interviewers usually, so we don't see everything and we don't have everything due to confidentiality. But we are able to say, look, you would need to improve your knowledge in X, or making sure that your bug doesn't have any, that your code doesn't have any bugs, those sort of things. But we won't have too much detail.
I think Jess is back.
We just want to make it more challenging for your colleague with the audio thing, right? But yeah, I'm happy to extend this for a couple of more minutes to just be fair to whoever is still listening in, or to answer some more questions.
There is a question from Jitendra Fartial, and he asks, whenever he's writing his CV, he feels that whatever he's writing is not enough. So his question is, what do recruiters expect in general when they're looking at a CV about specificity in writing? For example, a project. Should I write metrics or include programming language, or just give project overview, or should I tell the coolest thing that he did or she did? Jitendra, he did.
I would say a little bit a mixture of both, unfortunately. So again, if this is a technical role, coding languages are a must, unlike also any other tools or software that you are used to, and wherever you do testing with and whatnot. And if it's more of like project management, I would keep it brief, bullet points, as well as I said before, look at the buzzwords in the role description and see if you can match whatever is asked and mentioned there. And then obviously, I mean, if you would be in sales, closed $100 million contract, this is something obviously worthwhile putting on a CV. So, any data points that you can give, or increased time and efficiency with this code by X% or so. This is obviously something cool, and gives us a little bit more meat to look at and understand what the impact was that you have.
Okay. We take the last question before the closing remarks. This is by A.M.M. Sajidul Alum. And his question is, year gaps in both academic profile and career, will they be taken as a negative impact in the resume while filtering candidates? And if they are negative, then what can be done to recover those?
I think personally, gaps are absolutely fine. There are always reasons for this, right? And if it's just to explore the world and be ready to work afterwards, it's absolutely fine. But this can be something very personal, health related, whatever. And so I think this is fine. There are multiple reasons why you have a gap in your CV. I don't necessarily care too much about it. It's still for me about the skills that I'm looking for, and then how nice and friendly you are to work with. And if we are going to make you an offer, we would just need to have a little bit of a background why this gap is there.
Two more questions came. One is from Suprita Anand, and I would assume she's a she. So she says, just mentioned women in IT should always discuss compensation.
Yes, please.
A few tips to negotiate the compensation would really be helpful.
Mm-hmm. In my experience, some people are too easy to say yes to something. Do take the numbers, say, okay, cool, thank you so much. I will sleep over it. That is absolutely fine. And even if sleeping over it is just 10 minutes, but do think about it, right? Don't say yes in the first call. And then say, I actually expected X. I think I've been, I don't know, really good or I showcased very good strengths throughout the interview, or my current compensation is X. I have a different offer that gives me X. Is there something we can do? And then just see what the recruiter comes back with. We in our company don't have the power over money, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would just throw it all to you as candidates. So we have to then work with the compensation team. And this might take a little while. So also don't get cold feet and feel you need to say yes. But it's absolutely fine to just go back and say, expected more. Is there something we can do? And then see what they come back with. Maybe it's not, but then at least you've tried, and maybe it is. And then you can still say, I will think about it. Thanks for making the offer, and thanks for your support. I know it's a lot of hard work. I will think about it. Right. And then you can still take a night or two and then make a decision.
Jess, do you have any closing comments?
Really love the questions, not only from you, but also from the audience. I really enjoyed it a lot. I hope I was not a pain in the preparation. And yeah, love to be here. I hope it's a lot that you could take away from it. Yeah, and I'm also happy to hear the feedback. So looking forward to whatever you share. I hope it's not too bad.
Thank you so very much. Hey, you've made it till the end of this amazing conversation. Please check this space out next week, Wednesday as well. Next week, we publish another episode which you might find useful. We aim to release one new episode every Wednesday for the next 4 weeks on LinkedIn, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, Stitcher, GeoSavan, and a few more platforms. If you find this conversation useful, please share this with your friends and stay connected with us. Thank you for listening.